Hello there, and welcome to this lesson today where we are looking at system security, specifically the threats which are posed to networks. So people attack computer systems for different reasons. It could be for gaining information, it could be for destroying information, it could be just to be a general nuisance. But unfortunately people do attack computer systems, and there's different methods for them doing it. The first one is infecting with some sort of malware. So you can see there are different examples of malware which are around. I'm not going to bore you by talking you through each one. You can look through each one yourselves and do a little bit of research. But the main thing is with malware. Malware is an abbreviation for malicious software. So it's software which has been created to cause harm with the intent of causing harm, with the intent of something which is malicious, something which is upsetting. And there are different categories of malware. Some become more prevalent than other ones. Some which are more popular and easier to use than other ones, and sometimes they pop up in peaks and troughs. So for example, we've had spyware causing some problems with the NHS a few years ago where it was infecting machines and then it was locking them down, so then people had to pay for them. That then evolved into crimeware where more and more companies were being targeted maliciously for the intent of encrypting information and then making people pay for it being unencrypted. So malware, malicious software, bad stuff. We can also look at phishing, and phishing isn't a guy with a big fishing rod trying to take information off someone's screen, as we can see comically suggested here. But what it is a way of trying to get the information. So you've seen the emails, oh, I am from Nigeria, I've got this massive bank account, if you send me some money over, I can give you loads and loads of money back. You've seen the emails, this has been sent from PayPal, looks completely legitimate, but then they've got some spelling mistakes in there, or a dodgy link you can click on. These are examples of phishing. So it's trying to create the impression of something legitimate where it doesn't exist. Phishing is more impactful for people who are more naive when they're using computers, so new users of computers, more senior users of computers, and they can get tricked into quite easily thinking that something is legitimate when it isn't. Which brings us quite nicely into social engineering. And social engineering has got a life cycle around it, so we can see and break down how social engineering takes place. Social engineering is a method of deceiving someone to get the information that somebody wants, and trying to convince them and trying to trick them and lull them into a false insecurity to be able to receive and give out potentially private information. So the first stage of it is looking for a victim to pick, looking at their information. So for example, if someone's going to do a social engineering attack on Bill Gates, then they'll do a search on Bill Gates, find out some information, try and find some credible pieces of information where they could then pose as someone official to try and break in, and hopefully Bill Gates won't fall for it though. They then deceive the victims to gain a foothold. So they talk with them, they spin them a story, and they get to know them, and they create this facade of a potential relationship they might have, and then they get the information over time. So it's not a case of wham bam, let's get the information, let's get out again. It's something which happens over time. So you often see in the newspaper, so for example in the Daily Mail, where people are in relationships, or people they think they're in relationships with over a long distance, sending them hundreds if not thousands of pounds worth of money because they think that if they do that then their loved one is going to come and visit them. Unfortunately, this is another example of social engineering where people's feelings and emotions can be used against them. So once they've obtained the information over the time, they then cover all their tracks up, brings everything to an end to then make sure there's nothing which can be traced back to them. So again, this life cycle goes on and on and on each time they use social engineering. So what I want you to do in your books is nice, easy and simple. We've got 3 questions we can see here. What is malware? Different types of malware. So for that you are going to have to do some sort of research to get out extra pieces of information. What is phishing? How can it be prevented? What is social engineering? What happens during it? For bonus points, you could also pop in there some real life examples of malware, phishing, social engineering, what's happened, how's it happened, and what has the impact been. So you can now pause the video, have a go at those, and then once you've done that, we'll crack on with the video. So now we're going to look at brute force attacks, and these are, as the name suggests it, a brute force way of trying to crack someone's login or someone's password. So if you might know, for example, that someone's username is bob@bob.com, you can then do a brute force attack to try and work out what their password is. And it is just trying different combinations of passwords each time to then try and get into it. So for example, if you've got a mobile phone, you can sort of do a brute force attack on that. You can put in your PIN code, and if you put your PIN code correctly, it unlocks. But if you put it in incorrectly 6 times, 10 times, then the phone locks itself for 30 seconds. You can try again, and then locks itself for a longer time. So that's one way to guard against a brute force attack. But with a brute force attack, it is trying to get the information in by just trying as many combinations as possible. So you can see here the image on the left, a Facebook Brutes app, which I have no idea if it's legitimate or not. That's just something which I found. I do not condone it whatsoever. But again, if we can try and get if you know someone's email address that they use for Facebook, in theory you could do a brute force attack on their Facebook account to try and get login information. Next attack we're going to be looking at is a denial of service attack. So here we can see there's an attacker on the left hand side of the image, the target server on the right hand side of the image, and what a denial of service attack is someone trying to send lots and lots of information to a website at one time. And because they've only got one server on the end or a target server on the other end, what that means is that they're sending all this data towards a server and it can't do anything about it because it's got too much things coming in and it doesn't know what to do. The server falls offline. There's another version of this which is a distributed denial of server attack. So instead of having the one attacker and the four zombie accounts using it, there's multiple attackers, there's many more zombies. So when websites go down, it could be because there's a denial of service attack against them, because they've got all these packets of information coming in, trying to get in, and they just can't handle it, so the server gets knocked offline. Finally, this is a nice one to look at, data interception and theft. If you're sending information over a network, it can be intercepted, it can be stolen. So here we can see on the image here, 2 mobile phones trying to share information. We've then got someone sat in the middle intercepting the data. On a wireless network, this is, I don't want to say easy to do, but it is relatively straightforward to do, because as soon as you're in the vicinity of the wireless network, as soon as you can connect to the wireless network, you've got a foot in straight away. Whereas if you've got a wired network, where there's network cables, where there's Ethernet cables in there, it's harder to do because you physically have to connect to it. But if we're looking at information being sent, if it's not encrypted, if it is not secured, if there's no tags put into it, if there's no packet filtering put into it, then data can be intercepted, it can be looked at, it can be edited, it can be modified, it can be deleted, different data can be sent, so it can be really, really bad. And then also, if we're thinking about data theft as well, you don't want personal information being stolen. So next activity I want you to do, you can see the different questions which are here on the board, and again, bonus points are on offer for putting in real life examples of these. So again, that's a little bit of research you got to do, so give the video a quick pause and then we'll get cracking again. So the last series that we're going to be looking at is SQL injection attacks to begin with. So that is when there is a database powering a website. So for example, Facebook is one massive database. The Sony website has got one massive database for all the login information. So SQL injection attacks are used for getting information out of databases, or changing information which is in databases, deleting it, adding to it. And we can see here that we've got this link here which has been generated by the attacker, students.com student ID 117, so that might be looking for something particular, or 1 equals 1. You don't have to be a GCSE level student in math to realise that 1 is always going to be equal to 1. So what this is doing here is selecting all the information from students where student ID is 117 or 1 is equal to 1. Because of this 1 equals 1 section here, what's going to happen is all the student data is going to be returned. Everything is going to get sent back to the attacker, so they're going to see everything which is inside the database. So if you're thinking about the large companies such as Sony, if Sony had an SQL injection attack on their databases done, and they didn't have any credit card, if they had their credit card information in there and it wasn't encrypted, then in theory attackers could get everybody's credit card information which is held by Sony. This would be very, very bad. Finally, the last section we're looking at, apologies for the spelling mistake there on the image which I found, poor network policies. So when you join a company, when you join a school, you're given a loads of pieces of paper to read which are about different network policies to say what you should do, what you shouldn't do, how you should use it, how you shouldn't do things. And network policies are ridiculously important. So for example, we've looked at acceptable usage agreements, so what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Disaster recovery policies are really important if you have information which needs to remain accessible at all times. If your holding them in the same building where all your servers are anyway, and the building sets on fire, you're pretty much likely to lose your backups, so then at which point your company's probably going to go bankrupt. So for example, previous businesses where I've worked, they've purposely hired spaces off-site to hold USB sticks in case of disaster recovery. And again, that links us on to backups as well. Regular backups are needed, incremental backups are needed, full backups are needed. Again, with archiving and also making sure failover, making sure that any servers have got backups, and then those servers have got backups of the backups, and also looking at power usage and power monitoring as well. So final couple of questions for you there, which you can see. These are the last couple of questions because this is the end of the video. I hope you have had fun looking at this area, and I shall see you in another video. Remember, bonus points as always for getting in real life examples. See you later.